Hello, welcome to a new video for Screen Talk with yours truly, Nomfanelo Malloy. So, I saw this article the other day where director Mia Hansen-Love, she is being interviewed for her latest movie. And she there's a section in this article where essentially she talks about intimacy coordinators. So let's just take a look here. So yeah, this is for the Guardian, where at the top here she says, "I'd rather not film sex scenes that have virtue police on set." Interesting. So let's scroll down here. So the interviewer asks, "How has shooting sex scenes changed? Do you use intimacy coordinators now?" She says, "No, I don't. As long as I'm not forced to, I won't use them. I don't think I need it. I'm extremely sensitive and pay lots of attention to the respect that the actors need to have for one another. I've never had any kind of problem. I've never forced any actor to do anything. Everything is discussed and happens in a very smooth way. So for me, intimacy coordinators aren't necessary. If I was forced to have some kind of virtue police on set, I'd rather not film those scenes. I understand why some people might feel reassured, but it's very far from the experience of my own film sets." So I thought, yeah, that's interesting because I think for quite some time now, there has been debate on whether intimacy coordinators are needed or not. So I think for the most part, various members of the industry have said, yes, like we'd like to have intimacy coordinators, while there's others in the same industry that are like, no, that's not required. So for those of you that are not familiar with intimacy scenes, just want to share another screen here. So, found this article on Backstage where essentially to talk about intimacy coordinators. So, for those of you that are not familiar, an intimacy coordinator or intimacy director is a professional who facilitates, choreographs, and establishes boundaries for actors during scenes that involve intimacy, from kissing all the way to full on sex scenes. So, according to SAG AFTRA's standards and protocols for intimacy coordinators, so the role involves serving as a liaison between actors and production, making sure that performers and behind the scenes personnel follow safety protocols, helping the director realize their vision, choreographing movement to make scenes feel more believable, working to build a safe environment, which means clearly outlining expectations for directors during hyper exposed scenes and making sure they give their informed and continued consent. One of the crucial things an intimacy coordinator brings to the process is that they are the person who is there to think about all the things that need to be considered when we are going to do a scene like this, says intimacy coordinator Claire Warden. A director has so much to think about and deal with, so I think the real details and the place to soundboard ideas and visions off might sometimes get lost. That opportunity to have someone who understands this genre of artistic expression to be able to help clarify vision and realize the vision around actors' boundaries is unique. So in terms of how intimacy coordinators are trained, so they could earn professional certifications such as those offered by Century Co, the Intimacy Coordinators Education Collective, and Intimacy Professional Association, all of which are accredited by SAG-AFTRA. The union requires a mix of training and work experience in order to join their intimacy coordinator registry. To gain work experience, SAG advises aspiring intimacy coordinators to demonstrate intent, develop your skill set, and network. Let people know about your interest in this new field by getting involved in industry discussions. Join relevant groups, attend networking events, establish relationships with employers, identify potential mentors for advice, and look for assistant or shadowing opportunities. So I guess for those interested in becoming intimacy coordinators, I guess there's different opportunities as Backstage has mentioned here. For examples where I guess you could learn the skills and then gain experience to become a professional intimacy coordinator. Um, and yeah, for qualifications, so it includes you have to pass a background check, earn a certification from SAG AFTRA, approved training program, educate yourself on sexual storytelling, communication, modesty garments, consent, gender, sexual diversity, sensitivity, movement coaching, masking, and power dynamics from a SAG accredited training program, learning to understand union contracts. I discussed simulated sex, seeking mentorship from an established intimacy coordinator, and also to they advise to get experience working with actors and filmmakers because many coordinators start out as actors themselves or begin as a stunt or fight coordinator. So Alicia Rodas says here that as I became a fight director, I was also working theater and then begun working in stunts. And that was my transition into film, working as a stunt performer. It was during that transition that I also started working as intimacy coordinator. And they say this type of experience provides much needed knowledge of the intricacies of working on set. Interesting. So now that we know like the what an intimacy coordinator is, at least from a professional standpoint, so I want to show some different opinions on this subject matter because, as I've said, it's currently for quite some time and still is has been debated on whether they are necessary or not. So it's really going to depend who you ask in terms of whether intimacy coordinators are needed. So, first one I would like to show here is a video clip from Build series where actress Emily Mead, who stars in The Deuce by HBO, where she talks about essentially hiring an intimacy coordinator for the show, which involves a lot of those intimate scenes. So let's take a look.
Back to the first season when that conversation started happening about the intimacy coordinator and how it came up and where you were coming from and what it felt like that to bring that to the table.
Yeah, so for me, during season one already, I've, been acting since I was 16. I've been doing sex scenes since I was 16. I've had, long evolution of my relationship with that. And doing it so regularly, doing it meaning sexual content on a show that was for the first time probably what I thought it was the most important story about sex that I was telling. So it was never that I didn't want to use sex in the story, but
it was never like they like each other, so now we need a sex scene.
Much
more
the
show is about this.
Yes, and it never was for me, but as somebody who was getting older and more honest with myself and my sensitivity and what kind of life I wanted to live and what kind of personal sexuality I wanted to have, I was finding myself, sort of like Pinocchio becoming a real boy, like transforming into this creature who felt feelings, and I didn't know what to do with them. And I'd kind of gotten myself in this situation in this career where it was hard to let those both exist, to both be sensitive and present in your sexuality, but also have to kind of put on armor and a brave face at work to tell the story. And so that happened, and I was already feeling those feelings at the end of season one. And then in going into season two, everything with Time's Up and Me Too exploded. And as we all know, we were having these huge conversations about sex in the workplace. And for me, I did a lot of self-reflecting and asking myself how I had perpetuated those issues by either witnessing or participating or staying silent. And to me, I didn't know that that intimacy coordinators, not sex coordinators, that intimacy coordinators were a position. They were, but I didn't know that. But I sort of on my own thought that what would make me feel more comfortable would be to have somebody who's there on set, who their main job is to help oversee and facilitate and just be there for sex scenes, like a stunt coordinator, like an animal handler, like a child chaperone, to help with extra sensitive things. So I went to the producers and to HBO and I asked for this, and it turned out that it already existed. It just wasn't being used in film and television yet. And they hired one for our show, and then HBO wound up hiring it for all the shows, and so it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating because while like I was doing research for this topic, so when she requested an intimacy coordinator for the show, so I guess HBO, they decided to moving forward to implement a policy like to have intimacy coordinators for their productions. And yeah, I thought, yeah, that's quite fascinating because it seemed like, at least from what from this clip, that there's always been an intimacy coordinator, but I guess has not been implemented. And I've seen, I guess, various stories from mainly from actresses that when it came to performing like intimate scenes, usually sex scenes, um, there was like a level of like uncomfort, like awkwardness. So so I guess like for them, they find that with an intimacy coordinator, like it helps that process in terms of them being comfortable, like for the actors involved, and I guess for the crew members as well too, because I imagine that while filming those scenes, the set is limited where only the required crew members and the actors in the scene will be there on the day to shoot the scene. Now, on the opposing side, Toni Collette, for example, she spoke out on intimacy coordinators. So I found an article here on Deadline. Oh, get it. Where did I forget? So Toni Collette reveals intimacy coordinators make her more anxious while filming love scenes. So she did an interview for the London Times. I tried to find the original article for this, and it was under a paywall, so I could not read it. So here is the quote. I think it's only been a couple times where they've been brought in, and I have very much trusted and felt at ease with the people I was working with. It just felt like those people who were brought in to make me feel more at ease were actually making me feel more anxious. They weren't helping, so I asked them to leave. And then she enjoyed her 3 decade career. And she was asked if intimacy coaches would have made life easier when she was younger. She replied, I've been very fortunate in that I've only worked with a few arseholes over the several decades that I've managed to keep this boat afloat. And then that's pretty much her comments on this. So I wanted to bring up the comment section from Deadline. One person says here, like any position on a set, intimacy coordinators, what a weird term, work when you have someone who is tuned into the people they are working with. Could go great, could go sideways. I will never have one tell me how to direct, but I also don't expect to be working with children either, and that is not a comment on age. But they serve a very useful purpose, and when doing their job, can avoid very uncomfortable situations, not to mention potential lawsuits. When doing erotic scenes or just scenes of close intimacy, I'd rather have that buffer present, use whether they wind up being needed or not, as long as they follow the golden rule. Another comment here. Some people like apples, some don't. From my experience, if the intimacy coach is also an actor, the process isn't challenged. It's heightened and secures a safe space for really violent scenes when partners are young and unexperienced. Intimacy coaches are the link for trust, and so to each their own, live and let live. Uh, let's see. And then some just say, oh, like, oh, she's being selfish and worse, showing her age. Um, oh, she wasn't just deciding for herself, she decided for everyone in the room, all arguably less seasoned or powerful than her, that it wasn't needed. This is like saying in a major fight scene, I take boxing lessons. I'm totally comfortable throwing a punch. We'll just swing it and be spontaneous and see what happens. We don't need a sword coordinator. Meanwhile, the actor getting hit, it's absurd and again reflects a complete lack of understanding about what an intimacy coordinator actually does and is there for. So yeah. So this is, yeah, fascinating. As I said, so it really depends on the person at the end of the day on whether intimacy coordinators are needed. I see, like, from an acting standpoint, yes, because you do want to be comfortable performing scenes because sex scenes itself is uncomfortable, at least for most people. So yeah, like you want to make sure that the parties involved are on the same page. So for me, like I don't have any experience with intimacy coordinators because I have not been in those situations. But for as someone looking from the outside, for me as a filmmaker and as an actor, I do see a useful purpose for intimacy coordinators so that everyone can be on the same page in terms of what the goal for the scene is, what we're trying to achieve, and all that stuff. And I would say like it would be useful whether you use an intimacy coder or not to plan it ahead of time so that before production so that everyone knows what they're doing. It's like choreographing, let's say, a fight scene. You don't want to just go there on the day unprepared, not knowing what you're doing because it's not gonna work out for everyone involved. So for those scenes, it for the sex scenes, it's good that you work out how it's going to be choreographed, how it's going to look on camera, all that stuff. And it would be useful. Like, I'm sure not everyone is going to have the luxury of this, but rehearse this stuff ahead of time so that when it comes to the filming day, everyone knows what they're doing and there's no spontaneous behavior. So that's pretty much like my thoughts on this topic. So essentially, whether you choose to use intimacy coordinators or not, just make sure that everybody is on the same page. And it's helpful too that for actors, like hang out with the person beforehand, like get to know each other to build up that chemistry so that when it comes to the actual shooting day, um, everyone is you guys are comfortable with each other. So but yeah, that's pretty much it what I have to say. So I would like to know your thoughts. Are intimacy coordinators needed or are they not needed? I'd love to know, like, any actors, like, do you agree that yes, there should be intimacy coordinators or not? I would love to also know from a filmmaker's perspective as well too on this. So you could leave your comments in the comments section. So also too, yeah, you could look for my socials in the description, and with the articles and the videos mentioned, I'll post those in the description. And I want to say thank you guys so much for tuning into this video, and I will catch you on the next one.